Hi, my name is Gloria Robert. Today we are discussing the topic sexual reproduction. Objectives of lesson. As the lesson progresses, the learners should be able to 1. Define the term reproduction and mention the two types of reproduction. 2. Highlight the term sexual reproduction. 3. Define fertilization. 4. Mention at least 5 structures and functions of the male reproductive system in mammals. 5. Mention at least 5 structures and functions of the female reproductive system in mammals. And 6. Give at least 6 differences between sexual and asexual reproduction. Now, in our video on asexual reproduction, we discussed the best way to define reproduction. We also mentioned that we have 2 types of reproduction, which are 1. Asexual reproduction. 2. Sexual reproduction. In this video, we are going to be looking at sexual reproduction. Now, what is sexual reproduction? This is the kind of reproduction that involves 2 mature parent organisms. So in this reproduction, we need a male and we also need a female organism. Now, sex cells are produced in this kind of reproduction. And the sex cells are also known as gametes, and they are formed during mitotic cell division. Now, the gamete is therefore said to be haploid in its number of chromosomes. So that means it is half of the number of chromosomes of the body cells. Now, it involves the union of 2 different sex cells or gametes. So, the sex cells, as you know, are the sperm cell and the egg cells or ovum. Now, we have 2 types of sexual reproduction. So, we are looking at types of sexual reproduction. The first one is conjugation. This is a form of sexual reproduction in which the cellular organisms act as gametes and nuclear materials move from one cell into another. Now, it takes place in some lower organisms such as Pyrogera, Mucor, Paramecium, Rhizopus, and so on. Now, we are going to be using Pyrogera as our case study in the study of conjugation. Now, here is an image showing diagrammatic representation of life cycle of Pyrogera. So I'm going to be using the image to explain the steps I have here. Now, the number 1 here in this image shows a mature Pyrogera organism. Now, in step 1, 2 mature Pyrogera cells lie side by side. Each is called a conjugant. So you see it in number 2 in this image, the 2 cells lying side by side. Now, step 2, an outgrowth protrudes from each filament. Now, this meets up to form a link known as conjugation tube. Now, you see that one in number 3 and 4. You can see the filaments having outgrowths which later meet up to form a link. Okay, now that link is called conjugation tube. In step 3, the cytoplasm of one of the male organism or one of the cells, now acting as the male gametes, pulls away from its cell wall and moves into the other one through the conjugation tube. Alright, so the one that the nuclear material moves out of is actually serving as a male gamete. Now, number 4, the nuclear material fused into the other gametes. Now, the other filament is the female gametes, and so it forms what we call the zygospore. Now, at this point, we will say fertilization has taken place. You can see that one clearly in number 5. Alright, now step 5 here, the zygote develops into new individual. You can see the development gradually from 6 to 10 to 11. Now, at number 11 in this image, the filament is completely formed, a new one. Now, the second type of sexual reproduction is fusion of gametes. Now, this has to do with the fusion or joining together of the male sex gametes, which is the sperm cell, and the female sex gametes, which is the egg cell or the ovum, to form a zygote. Now, this process is called fertilization. So if you want to define fertilization, you can say this is the fusion or joining together of the male sex gametes and the female sex gametes to form zygotes. So the word fusion there stands for joining. Now, fertilization can be internal or external. If fertilization takes place inside the body of an organism, it is internal fertilization. If it occurs outside the body of an organism, it is called external. Here is an image showing fertilization. You can see the sperm cell swimming towards the egg cell. Now one of the sperm cell was able to fuse into the ovum, and at that point fertilization will take place. That is the lucky sperm cell. Alright, so fertilization actually takes place in the oviduct, or should I say fallopian tube of the female. Oviduct is also known as fallopian tube. Now the zygote that is formed at the end of fertilization develops into a new offspring. Now let's look at the structures and functions of the male reproductive system in mammal. Now structures means the parts that make up the male reproductive organ or system. Now number one, here we have the testes. The function of the testes is to produce sperm, okay, or the sperm cells. It also is responsible for the production of male sex hormones known as testosterone. It also helps in the development of secondary sexual characteristics or characters. All those characters that are exhibited during puberty are called secondary sexual character. Number two, we have the seminal tubules. Now follow me as I'm mentioning this using the image. Number two, there is the seminal tubules. It is the part in the testes where the sperm cells are produced. Now number three, yes, look at it. That is the epididymis. It's a long coil tube which collects and stores the sperm temporarily till they are mature. Now let's look for the vas deferens. Yes, it's also known as the sperm duct. It actually conducts sperm cell from the testes up and out of the male reproductive system. Then 5, seminal vesicle is a small sac at the back of the vas deferens. Its own function is that it stores the sperm till ejaculation. It also secretes part of the seminal fluid. Now let's look at number 6. Number 6 is the prostate gland. So look at the prostate gland in the diagram. Okay, you've located that. Good. It's actually connected to the urethra through many tubules. Its function is to secrete seminal fluid. Seminal fluid contains fructose, which gives energy to the sperm cell to swim in order to meet the ovum. Okay, so it gives them energy. Then number 7, we have the what? Cowper's gland. That is located very close to the prostate gland. I want to believe you've located it also in the image here. Good. Now its function is that it secretes parts of the seminal fluid, which neutralizes the acidic pH of the female reproductive system or medium. 8, we have the urethra. Urethra is a narrow tube which passes through the penis. It aids the passage of sperm cell and also serves as passage of urine out of the body of male. Hence, it's a urinogenital opening. The meaning of urinogenital opening is that it's an organ that can allow both the sperm cell and the urine to pass through. Alright. Number 9 is the penis. It contains tissues which, when filled with blood, makes it turgid or erect. It helps to introduce the semen into the vagina of the female animal and also helps for passage of urine. Okay, let's look at the structures and functions of the female reproductive system in mammal. Now, structures are those parts that make up a female reproductive organ or system. Now, number 1, we have the ovaries. Okay, there are actually 2 in mammals and they are found on each side of the vertebral column. So we have the left ovary and we have the right ovary. Function. Their function is they produce the egg cells. 2, they produce the female sex hormone, which are the estrogen and the progesterone. It also aids in the development of the secondary sexual character in female. Don't forget, I said these are the characters that are exhibited during puberty. I want to believe you know that. Number 2, we have oviduct. Oviduct is also known as the fallopian tube. It is a long, narrow funnel-like structure or tube which receives the eggs that are being released by the ovary. Okay, during ovulation. So ovulation actually is the release of eggs from the ovary into the fallopian tube or oviduct. This takes place once in a month in every female. Alright, fertilization takes place in the oviduct and also serves as passage of egg from ovary to the uterus. Number 3 is the uterus, or we can call it the womb. Yes. Okay, it's a muscular organ or sac which serves as cavity, that means a space for the development of an embryo from implantation to birth. So we all once lived in a womb. Alright, here is an image showing the female reproductive system. Okay, so let's look at them. I can see the ovary, I can see the fallopian tube. From there I can also see the uterus. So let us move on. Okay, we have the vagina. Is a muscular tube that leads the uterus to the outside of the body. It also receives the sperm cells from the penis during sexual intercourse and also acts as passage for fetus during birth. Alright. Number 5 is the cervix. Is a ring of muscles which with tiny opening that closes the lower end of the uterus where it joins the vagina. It controls the opening and closing of the vagina, especially during birth. So when a woman is pregnant, the cervix is locked up to ensure that there is no what coming out of the baby when it's not yet time. But when it's time, it opens up to allow the baby to come out. So just try here, locate the cervix. It's like a door. Okay. Now number 6 is clitoris. It's a small sensitive organ which corresponds to the male penis. It is erectile and can become erected when stimulated due to inflow of blood into it. It helps to stimulate the female during sexual intercourse. In another word, it's just like the penis of a male in terms of its function. It helps to stimulate sexual pleasure. Okay, now note that the external part of the female reproductive system generally is known as the vulva. Okay, so the vulva can include the clitoris and the labia. We actually have 2 labia. Okay, we have the labia majora, which is the bigger one, and we have the word labia minora, which is a smaller one. So take your time, go through the image of the female reproductive system here. Take note of all the parts we have mentioned. You'll be needing it later. Alright, structure of the mammalian gametes. Now don't forget that we have 2 types of gametes, the male gametes and the female gametes. Now gametes are the reproductive sex cells in mammals. They are formed in the gonads, take note of that, through a process called gametogenesis. So the process by which these sex gametes are being formed is called gametogenesis, and they are formed in the what? Gonad. They are haploid cells. We mentioned that before. Now let's look at the male gametes. This is called the sperm cell or spermatozoa. It is produced in the male gonad called testes by the process of spermatogenesis. It consists of the following parts. The first part is the acrosome. This is found at the upper part of the head of the sperm cell. It contains lytic enzymes which are used to dissolve the egg membrane of the ovum, of course, in order to enhance penetration during fertilization. So go to the image, look at that part, acrosome. Yes, I've seen it. Okay, number 2 here is the middle piece. This part contains mitochondria. Okay, mitochondria are needed for generation of energy that is used by the sperm for swimming towards the egg. Yes, it takes a whole lot of journey to move from the vagina through the uterus up to the fallopian tube in order for fertilization to take place. So it needs energy, and that is being provided by the what? Mitochondria in the what? Middle piece. Good. Now it also have a part known as the flagellum. This is the long whip-like tail. It looks like rope, right? For propelling the sperm cell. So it's used for movement. So that part that looks like a whip is known as a flagellum. That is the part that aids the sperm cell to swim, to move from one place to another. And we also have the part known as the nucleus. The nucleus is found in the head of the sperm cell, and it contains genetic material, that means the DNA of an organism, which can fuse with the nucleus of the female egg cells, okay, during the process of fertilization. So also look at the image. You find out that the sperm cell is divided into 3 parts. We have the head, we have the middle piece, and we have the tail. Let's look at the female gametes. This is called egg cell or ovum. It is produced also in the female gonads, which is known as the ovary, and this is by a process known as oogenesis. Now don't forget, the egg cells are formed by a process called oogenesis. They are formed in the female gonad known as ovary. Now the ovum is larger than the sperm cell. So sperm cells are actually microscopic, you can't see them easily, okay, and they are released once in a month from the ovary into the oviduct, and this process is called ovulation. I've mentioned that earlier. Now each ovum is made up of 5 main parts. Number 1, the cytoplasm. 2, a central nucleus. If you study the image, you see the parts I'm mentioning now. Number 3, the granule yolk droplet. Number 4, plasma membrane. And number 5, outer fertilizing membrane. So the egg actually has 2 covering. The outer one is called the outer fertilizing membrane, and the inner one is called the plasma membrane. Okay, the nucleus of the sperm and the ovum contains chromosomes, which carry the genes that are responsible for the transmission of characters from parents to offspring. So as children, you got all your characters from your parents because they were actually inside the sperm cell and the egg cells of our parents. So let's look at the development of embryo. After zygote has been formed, there will be some division, cell division, and then the baby needs to grow. Now after fertilization in the oviduct, the dividing cell moves into the uterus or the womb and attach itself to the wall of the womb or uterus, and this process is called implantation. So implantation is the what? Attachment of the zygote cell or dividing cell to the wall of the uterus. Here the embryo receives nutrients and develops until delivery. Now the embryo of fetus has the following adaptive features. For it to be able to develop and survive in the womb, it needs 1, placenta. Now this connects the embryo and the mother together. The function of the placenta, number 1, it carries oxygen, water and food from the mother's blood to the embryo's blood. Number 2, it also removes excretory waste like urea, salt, carbon dioxide from the embryo's blood and transfer it to the mother's blood for elimination. It also produces hormones which helps the mother to adapt to pregnancy. So here is a baby attached to the placenta through the umbilical cord. So another part that can ensure that the baby survives well is the umbilical cord. Now this helps to attach the embryo to the placenta. The blood of the mother and of the fetus are however separated. They don't mix up together. Okay, number 3, this is what is cut off during delivery, okay, to just remain a small portion known as the navel. Number 3 is the yolk sac. This provides digested food for the developing embryo. Number 4 is the embryonic membrane. Now this membrane develops or envelopes the fetus to provide it adequate protection. The membrane includes the amnion. This is the innermost membrane, which is filled with amniotic fluid, and this fluid serves as cushion to the fetus. The fluid also neutralizes the effect of change of external temperature. We also have the one we call the chorion. This is the outermost membrane which absorbs oxygen for the embryo. They too need to breathe. Then the last one is the word allantois. It is a membrane which aids respiration and excretion in developing embryo. So when you say the water breaks, that means the embryonic membrane is broken. So let's look at the differences between asexual and sexual reproduction. Number 1 here is that asexual reproduction involves one parent organism only, while sexual involves 2 organisms. Good. Now in asexual reproduction, there's nothing like gametes, so gametes are not produced, but in sexual reproduction, gametes are produced. Number 3 here, in asexual reproduction, offsprings are genetically identical to the parent. If you remember, I said they are clone or the exact copy of the parent. But in sexual reproduction, offspring shows genetic variation. Okay. Number 4 here, under asexual reproduction, the cell division are only mitotic, so it's by mitosis. Okay. While in sexual reproduction, gametes are produced by meiotic division. All right. Now number 5 here is that large numbers of plants are actually, or organisms are produced in a very short time in asexual reproduction, but in sexual reproduction, comparatively, the number produced is less. All right, we have others. Okay, we've come to the end of our class. This is our students' activity. It's time for you to test your mastery of this topic. Go through the video if you have any question or you don't understand any part. I want to believe at the end you should be able to answer all these questions. So, answers to the students' activities. So it's time for you to mark yourself. I hope you have 100%. Okay, thank you for joining me in this class. Thanks for learning.